Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Ted Chin, Assistant City Manager. We just recently conducted our third consecutive annual survey of residents' attitudes and perceptions regarding our service delivery. And I just want to spend a couple minutes, since we have a couple new faces on council, as to why we survey. If you recall, back in 2015, we formally adopted a framework for how we do business, whereby we obtain citizen input as much as we can, which goes into policy development. And the council typically does that in the springtime, where we develop our strategic goals. We then meet with staff and we work out strategic objectives in order to try to meet those goals. And then that funnels into the budget process, and we allocate our resources based on what the community wants. And then, of course, once those strategies have been identified and are implemented, we measure those and we bring those to you on a quarterly basis. You're familiar with a few of them with neighborhood vitality and the community policing efforts. But this part of the process in the fall, we have been conducting a citizen survey. And this is just one element or just one strategy, if you will, to obtain as much citizen input as possible. We also have routinely used town hall meetings, even focus groups on the department level, and citizen committees and such. By aligning our services to what the citizens want, you see that the survey areas are typically, we're covering questions and how we're delivering services in regard to public safety, and that addresses our strategic goal of having a safe community. We survey code enforcement, how we're doing there, and that directly ties with having attractive neighborhoods. Of course, maintenance and appearance is probably the #1 issue you'll see here when we go over the results, but improved transportation and mobility. And then in redevelopment and job growth, we measure that, and that ties into having a vibrant economy. Communications, we ask folks how they like to receive communications, and that ties into how we offer a high-performing and transparent government. And of course, parks and recreation ties into having a quality recreation and culture. So we've completed the survey, and where folks can go to find the survey results is obviously on our homepage of our city website. It's right down there, and I'm sure Wayne will, Mr. Larson and his group will update the results. Currently, the 2018 survey results are there, but we'll link it in and put the new results right there. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jason Morado with ETC Institute, and he'll go over the findings of this year's survey.
Welcome. Good to have you.
I'll just use the arrow keys first.
Thanks. Great. My name is Jason Morado. I'm with ETC Institute. It's great to be back here in the city of Mesquite. This is the third year that we've conducted the community survey, as Ted said, and this is the third time I've been here to present the results. So today I'm going to go through the high-level key findings from the survey. If you've seen the report, it's very comprehensive and detailed, and gets into a lot more detail even than what I'll go through here today. So I have one slide about ETC Institute. We're based in Olathe, Kansas, which is in the Kansas City area, but we're a national leader in providing market research for local governments. We've been doing this type of work for over 35 years, and in the last 10 years alone, we've conducted surveys in more than 900 cities and 49 states, and that includes a lot of work throughout the state of Texas. So this is really the type of work that we specialize in. This is just a quick rundown of what I'll go through today. I'll go briefly over the purpose and methodology of the survey. What I call the bottom line up front is our main conclusions from the survey, boiled down to one PowerPoint slide. And then I'll go through the major survey findings to show how we came to those conclusions. And of course, I'll be happy to answer any questions as well. You can wait till the end if you like, but if you have a question as I'm going through, feel free to jump in because there are quite a few slides I'll be going through. So there are several reasons to conduct a survey like this. One is to get an objective assessment of how satisfied residents are with major city services, and then also to determine their top priorities for the community. We're also able to measure trends from the 2 previous surveys. Each year we've tweaked a few questions, but most of the questions have been the same all 3 years we've conducted the survey. And then also we're able to compare your results with other communities on both a regional and a national basis. So this survey is 7 pages long. That's the maximum length for one of our community surveys, so we fit in as many questions as we possibly could. The survey is administered by a combination of mail and online to randomly selected residents throughout the city. And that's our standard methodology for these types of surveys, is that mail-online combination. We ended up with a total of 851 completed surveys. Our goal was to get 850, so we accomplished that goal. And one thing we always do when we conduct these surveys is, as we're collecting the data, we check the demographics to make sure they reflect the actual population of the city. So we had a really good representation by age, race and ethnicity, gender, and geographic location. And the results of these 851 surveys at the 95% level of confidence has a margin of error of plus or minus 3.3%. So essentially that means that if we conducted this survey the same way 100 times, 95 times the results would be plus or minus 3.3% from what we're reporting. So the results aren't perfect, but really it's a very small margin of error. So I've got just a few demographic slides we'll go through. Here is the age of respondents who filled out the survey. We had a really good representation by all different age groups. This is the race and ethnicity of survey respondents. We had a really good representation here as well. This matches up almost exactly with the U.S. Census. It's very similar to what we had the previous 2 years we conducted the survey. And then we had a 50-50 split of male-female survey respondents. So here we have a map of the city, and the red dots are households that completed a survey. So we had a really good representation throughout the city. You can see the black lines show the boundaries of the 6 council districts. And this representation is very similar to what we had the previous couple years we conducted the survey. So here's our main conclusions from the survey. We found once again that Mesquite rates higher than other communities when it comes to the value that residents receive for city tax dollars and fees. This has been the case all 3 times we've conducted the survey. This year you rated 14% above the Texas average and 7% above the U.S. average in the value that residents feel like they're receiving for taxes and fees. And then once again, one of the areas where you rate the farthest above other cities is when it comes to customer service from city employees. You rated 23% above the Texas average, 21% above the U.S. average. We found that the top priorities for city services are maintenance of city streets and sidewalks, enforcing codes and ordinances, and then public safety. Those are similar priorities to what we had in previous years, and in a little bit I'll show you how we came to those as the top priorities. And then we asked residents what they feel are the top issues facing the city over the next 5 years. The top 3 things they listed were public safety, street maintenance, and neighborhood vitality. So first we'll take a look at just some general perceptions that residents have of the city. This is the very first question on the survey. We're asking residents to rate their perceptions of the city in a number of different ways. You can see the dark blue are residents who are very satisfied, light blue is satisfied. The white is neutral, and in this case we interpret neutral as meeting expectations. It's a 3 on the 5-point scale. Those are people who had an opinion because there was also an option of selecting don't know, and we excluded those from these charts. And then the pink are those who are dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. So one of the areas I want to point out here is that 3rd row down, value received for city tax dollars and fees. 44% of respondents are either very satisfied or satisfied, which is about twice as many who are dissatisfied at 24%. Typically that ratio is closer to 1-to-1, so that's actually a very good ratio compared to other communities. We asked about the quality of life in Mesquite. If you look at that top row, 61% of respondents feel the city is either an excellent or a good place to live, which is about 3 times as many who gave a rating of below average or poor. Here we're asking about satisfaction with major categories of city services. So here we're asking residents to rate these areas at the big picture departmental level. And then later on in the survey, we ask about some more specific areas within some of these categories. So one of the things that stands out here is that overall, the positive ratings far outweigh the negative. Most areas receive high ratings. When we get to the benchmarking section, you'll see that for most of these areas, you're outperforming other cities. The highest rated areas you can see are police, fire and ambulance service, trash and yard waste, libraries. There are a couple of areas that do have significant levels of dissatisfaction. Enforcing codes and ordinances, you have 35% who are dissatisfied, but then you do have 39% who are satisfied. And then streets and sidewalks, you've got over 50% dissatisfied compared to 30% either very satisfied or satisfied.
Stop you for just a second.
Sure.
On the responses to the code, is that, and do we know, is that not liking having to deal with code enforcement or thinking that it's not enough? Could you clarify that for me?
Sure. Usually, we didn't ask that question specifically, but when we do, usually it means there's not enough. Sometimes we ask, is it too much not enough or too little? And it's overwhelmingly not enough.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. And there are some more details in that also a little later on in the report. So next we'll switch gears and look at satisfaction kind of across the city. So what we did here is we broke the results down by census block group. So these are very, very small areas. We did this for every question on the survey asked on a 5-point scale. So there's well over 100 maps in the report. I've got just a few that we'll take a look at here. This one is for the overall quality of public safety, police, fire, and ambulance services. And you can see the entire map is blue. So what this tells us is that residents in all parts of the city are satisfied with the overall quality of public safety. And it also means that the city's doing a great job providing services equally throughout the city. So anytime a map's entirely blue, that's what that's telling us. And in fact, here there's even a few areas that are dark blue, which is the highest possible rating. Now for codes and ordinances, now any place when we conduct the survey, codes always rates lower than public safety. Here you can see there's a lot of yellow, which is the average rating, kind of meeting expectations. We do have a couple areas in blue, and then a few in orange, which are the areas where residents are a little more dissatisfied. You can see primarily that's up in kind of the north and northwest area of the city. Here are the ratings for maintenance of city streets and sidewalks. So here we've got kind of a wide variety of responses. A couple of areas where people are satisfied. The red is where people are the most dissatisfied. Quite a bit of the yellow, more of a kind of meeting expectations, but then also quite a bit of orange. Obviously, especially in the north and the western part of the city where residents are a little more dissatisfied with streets and sidewalks.
Yeah, it also is where the streets are older.
Right.
And in disrepair. I mean, if you look at that map, you could almost retitle it "Condition of City Streets" as well. So, I mean, all of your older, more traditional neighborhoods and the streets and the street conditions, I mean, it almost matches one for one with there.
Right.
So that's a very significant point for all of us to remember.
Right. Yep. Great. Thank you. And then for traffic flow, you can see here we've got quite a mix of areas where people are satisfied, quite a bit of the yellowish, kind of the average rating, and then a couple pockets of the orange where residents are dissatisfied. And then here are the ratings for customer service from city employees. So this one's very good, mostly blue throughout the entire city, a couple of areas even in dark blue. So residents pretty consistently throughout the city are satisfied with the overall quality of customer service. So now we'll take a look at comparisons to other communities. So for these next charts, the blue line are Mesquite residents who are either very satisfied or satisfied. So this is the 4 or the 5 on the 5-point scale. The red are the satisfaction ratings from residents throughout the state of Texas. And then the yellow are the results from all across the U.S. So as we go through these, I put blue arrows where you rate at least 4% or more above both the regional and national average. Red arrows where you're at least 4% or more below. So this first chart's for major categories of city services. And you can see most areas you're rating higher than other cities. The areas that especially stand out are public safety, trash and yard waste, parks and recreation, customer service. That's one of the areas where you rate the farthest above other communities. You have a 63% satisfaction rating. The regional and national average is only around 40%. And then communication is another area that's above other cities. The couple of areas that do rate lower are codes and ordinances, and then streets and sidewalks. For public safety, there's quite a few areas here where you're rating a little bit above other communities. The one area that's significantly higher is how quickly firefighters respond to emergencies. And then we do have a couple of areas that do rate below: visibility of police in neighborhoods, and then quality of public safety education programs. For utilities and solid waste services, this is another area where you're rating significantly higher than other communities. You can see you rate much higher when it comes to yard waste and brush collection, garbage collection, bulky item pickup, recycling, quality of service, water department customer service. That's more than 20% above the regional and national average. The only area that's below is the taste of tap water. Now for maintenance and appearance, now this is one of the areas that has, sure.
Councilman Miklas.
So, and I had this come up a couple of times in the last month and a half. Is it just the taste, or was there any discussion of like the condition or substances or allergic reactions to anything like that?
You know, we didn't really delve any deeper than this than just simply asking taste. Typically when we ask this, that is what it is. It's just simply the taste and not those other things, but we didn't really get any more specific than that.
Thanks.
Now for maintenance and appearance, here you can see there are quite a few areas that rate lower. There are a couple that rate higher than other communities. The appearance and condition of medians in public areas, visibility of pavement markings and street signs. But then areas that rate below include street lighting, just the overall cleanliness of streets, the condition of neighborhood streets, major streets, and sidewalks, and then the availability of bike lanes. For parks and recreation, several areas that rate a little bit above other communities, a couple that rate significantly higher, which includes the quality of walking and biking paths, and then the quality of aquatic and pool facilities. A couple of areas that do rate lower are recreation programs, both for youth and adults. And then for customer service, we saw that the overall ratings for customer service were really outstanding, and they're really good as well when you look at some more of the specific areas. Very high ratings for how easy the city is to contact, how well employees provide accurate information and assistance, and then how well residents feel like their issues are being handled. In that area, you're more than 10% above both the regional and national average. So next we'll look at the trends and see how these results compare to previous years. So for these charts, the blue lines are the satisfaction ratings for 2019, the red are the ratings for last year, and the orange 2017. And as we go through these, I put blue arrows by the places where you're significantly higher than 2017, which is the first year we conducted the survey. Red arrows where you're at least 4% below. So this first chart is for major categories of city services. Overall, not a lot of significant differences. The one area that's down compared to 2017 is effectiveness of communication. Now we saw in the benchmarking charts, you still rate significantly higher than other communities, but it has gone down a little bit. Just 2% compared to last year, which isn't significant, but down 5% compared to 2017. For maintenance and appearance, again, a lot of the ratings are very similar to what we've seen over the past couple of years. One of the areas that has gone down is condition of major streets. You can see that increased a little bit from 2017 and 2018, from 38 up to 41%, but now it's down to 35%. And then there's a couple of areas that have had significant increases compared to a couple of years ago. Street lighting, it is down 3% from last year, but even with that, still up 5% from where it was a couple of years ago. And then the availability of bike lanes is increased 2% each of the couple of years we've conducted the survey. For public safety, there's quite a few areas that have had a small increase in satisfaction, no significant ones though. But then there are a couple areas that have had bigger decreases going back to 2017. Efforts to prevent crime, that's down just 3% from last year, which isn't significant, but 7% from a couple years ago. So it's kind of trending downward. And then the same thing for safety education programs, down 6% from last year, but then 9% if you go back 2 years ago. For residential and neighborhood services, quality of neighborhood condition, only down 2% from last year, but 4% going back a couple years ago, so kind of just gradually, not significantly, but gradually trending downward. And then neighborhood and crime watch groups, down just 2% last year, but 7% if you go back a couple years ago. And then library services, this is one of the areas that's had the most significant increases over the past couple of years. Big increases in quality of library staff customer service, as well as the amount of quiet space at libraries, and then both the availability and quality of computers and other electronic devices. So next we'll take a look at top priorities. So this is what we call the important satisfaction rating, and this is a tool we use to help communities set priorities and decide what should be the most important areas to focus on. So this analysis is based on 2 questions on the survey. First, we ask how satisfied residents are with services, which is the type of data we've been looking at. And then the follow-up question is which services are the most important for the city to emphasize. So the idea here is that those items that have a combination of a low satisfaction rating, but are also ones that rated as the most important, should be the highest priorities. So this first table is for major categories of services. By far, the top priority is maintenance of city streets and sidewalks. Residents rate that is the most important out of these 10 to focus on, and are rated last out of these 10 in satisfaction. And then there's 3 other areas that fell into the high priority category, which includes codes and ordinances, and then public safety. Traffic flow is there as well, but it just barely fell into the high priority category. Now this is just a different way of looking at the same set of information. I like the numbers, but some people prefer this type of format. So the way to look at this is the items at the top are the ones with the highest level of satisfaction. Then as you move down, the satisfaction gets less and less. If you start to the far right, those are the areas residents rated as the most important. And as you move left, the importance gets less and less. So if you look at that bottom right-hand corner where it says opportunities for improvement, those are the ones that have that combination of low satisfaction, but also high importance. So you can see we have maintenance of city streets and sidewalks, and then enforcing codes and ordinances. The public safety ended up in the continued emphasis, and what that means is that the satisfaction is very high, but it's still an area that residents feel is really important to focus on. So now we're back to the important satisfaction rating with the numbers. This one's for maintenance and appearance. There's 3 areas that really stand out here as high priorities. They have that combination of low satisfaction but high importance. It's condition of major streets, condition of neighborhood streets, and then the condition of neighborhood sidewalks. For public safety, here we have 2 areas that really stand out. Just overall efforts to prevent crime, and then visibility of police and neighborhoods. And for code enforcement, here there's 4 areas that stand out as being a very high priority. Enforcing junk and trash on private property, exterior maintenance of residential property, just the overall aesthetics of the city, and then cleanliness of neighborhoods. And then here we ask residents, what are the 3 biggest issues Mesquite will face over the next 5 years? And residents could only pick up to 3. They couldn't pick everything. So you can see the top priority is public safety. More than 6 out of 10 residents pick that as one of the 3 biggest issues facing the city over the next 5 years. The second biggest issue is street maintenance, and third is neighborhood vitality. And those were the top 3 last year as well. But last year, public safety and street maintenance were neck and neck as 1 and 2. This year, public safety, I think, is clearly 1, and then streets is second.
I got one question.
Councilor
Sure.
Burris.
On the public safety, did they distinguish between police and fire?
Not for this one, no. Here we just simply listed it that way.
All right.
Yeah, but I think we, I think we got to that more on this table. Because this includes all of it. Okay, so some other various survey findings. So we ask, over the past 12 months, do you think Mesquite has become more safe, less safe, or stayed the same? So if you look at that top row, this year 7% say Mesquite's become more safe over the last 12 months. That number has been consistent over the past couple of years. But if you look at the bottom row, this year 43% say the city become less safe over the last 12 months. And that number's gone up a little bit from the last couple of years. So definitely an area to take a look at. We asked how residents would rate their experience with police officers over the past 12 months. So this year, 74% rated their experience as excellent or good. Only 10% said below average or poor. And that's consistent with previous years. So once again, most residents who have contact with police officers have really had a positive experience. We asked residents which sources they currently use to get information about the city. By far, the top source is the city's website. Almost 8 out of 10 residents selected that as a source of information about the city. The second most frequently mentioned source was the mainstream newsletter, followed by the city's Nextdoor page and then city's Facebook page. Now, the follow-up question to that is, which of these sources do you most prefer to get information about the city? So the good thing here is that the way residents prefer to get information about the city pretty well aligns with the way they currently are getting information. They most prefer to get it through the website, followed by the newsletter, then Facebook and Nextdoor page. We asked which 3 factors are the most important for City Council to consider regarding new housing development. So you can see the top choice is affordability, followed by neighborhood amenities, and then lot size. This is also consistent with what we've seen on previous surveys. And then this is a question we asked for the first time last year. We asked, are you satisfied with the quality and affordability of housing in Mesquite? So last year, 47% said yes, compared to 23% no. Improved a little bit this year. This year, 49% said yes, compared to 22% no. So just a quick recap. We saw that once again, the city rates higher than other communities when it comes to the value of city taxes and fees. Customer service, once again, rates significantly higher than other cities. One of the areas where you rate the farthest above other communities. Top priorities are maintenance of streets and sidewalks, codes and ordinances, and then public safety. And then residents feel the top issues facing the city over the next 5 years are public safety, street maintenance, and neighborhood vitality. So with that, does anyone have any other questions or comments?
Council, you want to just go around the table and you can ask your questions and comments? Is that okay? Mr. Green, why don't we start with you, and we'll go around this way, end with Councilman Burrows. I'll come back with some thoughts.
Yeah. Well, first I want to thank you for the excellent work on the survey. That's very useful information. I'm sure we'll make the best use of it. As we go through the survey, it's pretty much in line with what we've seen as we talk to people out in the neighborhoods. I mean, people aren't happy with our streets. We always have some crime challenges and things like that. I think that the survey just kind of reaffirms what we already know. I think as a council, we're going to have to make some really tough decisions and try to figure out how we can start addressing our streets, since that seems to be the overall prevailing biggest concern people have. We've got to find a way to do more. I know it's expensive. I know it's going to cost some money, but we're going to have to find a way to come up with a plan to make it happen, because, we've got to start making sure that the people of this city are happy with the results they're getting. And when you've got an overwhelming majority of people telling you, hey, we're not happy with the condition of our streets and our alleys and our sidewalks, that's a big concern, because that's their access to get from one place to the other. So if we're not providing the people with access that they're comfortable with, that's a problem. We've got to address that. Also, you see some crime challenges on the survey as well. When you're looking at that, people aren't happy with, with some of the effort they're seeing as far as visibility. So we're going to have to look into that too. I think that we just really need to take the survey information to heart and make sure that when we're setting up policies and we're looking to allocate money during the budget process, that we're saying, hey, you know what? People really are, they're not happy with this stuff. We've got to look and try to find those dollars that we can to spend that way. We've got to look to do everything we can to try and make sure that we're taking care of, our streets and our alleys and our sidewalks first, because obviously, when you see these kind of results, it's just disheartening in a city like ours to see that we have these many challenges and people aren't that happy. So, I look forward to working on this, over the next, several months and years to try and see if we can come up with a solution to try and turn this trend around. I would like to see us, be able to change the survey numbers a little bit by next year so that we don't have such an overwhelming majority of people unhappy. So, other than that, I'll go ahead and defer to.
Thank you, Councilman Green. Councilman Allamont?
When we take a look at the survey, it just really motivates me strongly, in regards to what people are seeing, what people are feeling, what people are thinking, in regards to what we can do to make things better. I like to see it. We got to keep moving that point on the line in the positive direction. In your opinion, again, which is the most significant change that we've seen in the last 3 years that has been an increase for our city, and which has been the most significant one, in your opinion, that has been a downward trend, a decrease that you think?
I think the biggest decreases over the past, going back to 2017, I'm going to go back to those slides. These are a couple of the biggest things related to safety. Streets has been, it's interesting, streets has been kind of consistent, about the same, the level of satisfaction. It's been a really high priority all 3 years. But like you say, it's really expensive and time consuming to fix that, so that's not unusual. So those are clearly I think the top priorities.
Safety and the streets. As
yeah.
far as increase, improvement?
The biggest increases, improvements, there's just kind of several things here and there. Libraries overall is the category that's improved the most, but then there's just some specific things throughout the survey, like street lighting. There's a few other kind of just specific areas you can point to.
Okay, and just going through some of the pages here that you've mentioned, page 12, visibility of police in our areas, and I know, again, we need to continue to work in helping people to understand community policing, because we can only do so much as far as police around the whole city of Mesquite with what we have out there. And we need to encourage our citizens to understand the philosophy of community policing. So I know that's a big part of that. And of course, the quality, this is on page 12, quality of public safety education programs, what we can do there to be able to do that. And but also on page 15, the effectiveness of city communication, and I felt like our city has done real well in communicating, but here's another, it's kind of taken a little bit of a downward trend. Is there anything specific that of a question that has brought that down a little bit as far as the effectiveness of our city communicating to the citizens?
I don't have it in the presentation, but there is a question where we break out and ask about some specific areas of communication. I don't have that in front of me to remember exactly what it was, but we did ask about some specific things like social media. I have the survey here, but so if I remember, it was kind of a combination of things. It wasn't really any one area that stood out the most.
Right, okay. And again, on page 16, quality of public safety and city efforts to prevent crime and those downward trends. To me, again, we got to get back to a stronger educating of our citizens in regards to community policing, neighborhood crime watch groups, quality of your neighborhood condition. And I like that you brought up the neighborhood vitality, because I think that's going to help tremendously if we continue to go after the neighborhood vitality that we need to do neighborhood vitality groups. So overall, I take this as a major challenge, and I know that streets is up there on top, and so it should be, and also the public safety of our city. So it is a big challenge, Mayor, and that we can tackle together. But again, at the top of my mind, community policing. We've got to really go after that at the grassroots level with our city, because we can only have so many officers out there on the streets, and it's understood and we know it. So we want our folks out there to feel safe in their communities. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to make a brief statement about your survey, and then I'll ask one question.
Sure.
Over the past 3 months, I've had the opportunity to walk District 5. I've actually been to over 600 residents in District 5. Ironically, a lot of the same questions that you asked in your survey is the same thing that I've been asking my constituents about what's going on in your neighborhood and what do you feel that the city needs to improve on, et cetera. Your survey actually hits the target right in the middle. Everything that I've heard is it compares to what your survey says, which there's some good things and there are some needs for improvement. I concur with what Mr. Alderman has said about our police community that we need to work on a little bit. And then one question, because I do have a lot of senior citizens in District 5 as in other districts, in question 32, sources residents most prefer to use to obtain or receive information. The younger generation, and I'm saying the older generation does not, but social media is not in a lot of homes for 65 and over. Did your survey, is there any data on your survey of 65 and older who do not use social media? So there has to be another avenue of reaching out to residents in that age category. Thank you.
Sure. Well, we did ask the question about the age of survey respondents, so we definitely could break out the results for any question on the survey by different age group. So yeah, we could absolutely do that, and there definitely would be a significant difference for that question between the youngest and older residents. Yep.
Thank you, Councilman Smith. Councilman Miklos?
Thank you, Mayor. I very much appreciate your efforts in collating this. I completely agree with Councilman Smith. If you've been going door to door and walking your district and talking to folks, I mean, we're also really good surveyors, and we heard a whole lot of the same things. I have a little bit more of an interpretation of the data, not different than you, but I think I would say more. And that is that my feeling is that what our citizens are telling us is that they, on streets, we can't continue to do what we've been doing. That we have to do something more, something different, something additional. We are losing our citizens on our streets. And the graphic that I pointed out where the streets that are older showed neighborhoods with less satisfaction, and that's because those are the areas where the streets are bad or worse or awful or terrible or almost non-existent. And the fact of the matter is that our citizens are telling us, whether we want to believe them or not, our citizens are telling us that what we're doing isn't working and that we have to do something different, something more, something better. Something more lasting, and not just on our streets, but our alleyways. And what I hear that is they don't want us to take anything from public safety. They want, public safety is the #1 priority. They love our police and fire departments. They love the men and women in our police and fire departments. They think they're doing a great job. The way I read this is that they're very concerned about outside circumstances affecting, and a concern as to whether or not we have enough resources, enough of those great men and women in those positions to stem the tide, so to speak. And so I think that they're telling us Absolutely don't take a single thing from public safety, and if you can, put more in. I would read that. Neighborhood vitality, I really believe and code enforcement really has a whole lot to do with both our streets, but something else, and something that I picked up, and I'm going to mention this here in this. We have a whole lot of rental houses with 3, 4, 5 families in those homes, with 12 to 15 cars parked. It's really hard to get up and down a street to get a fire or an ambulance or a police car down the street when they're double parked and you're weaving around and you can't even, there are some streets you can't even get down. And so I think that affects and shows the decline in support for what we're doing in code enforcement. And I am very, very strongly convinced that we cannot continue to do the same old as far as what I would say is our fake single family that has become multifamily and has really, really harming a lot of our neighborhoods. We have 10 good neighbors and then one single family home with 5 families living in it, and it's bringing down the entire neighborhood, and we've got to do more and better in our code enforcement. It affects our streets, it affects everything, and I think that's what we're picking up in these surveys. And the second part is that we just have too many cars on our streets, and again, I'd cycle that back to we've got too many families illegally living in single family homes, and we've really got to we can't brush that off as an organization and say, boy, it's difficult to enforce. What are we supposed to do? We're going to have to figure out a way to do it, and because it's really pulling a lot of our neighborhoods down. We've got to figure out a way to do more on our streets. We just have to. I think this is, a lot of us just got hired or rehired to sit at this table, and I think this is our job evaluation form that tells us what their expectations are. And a year or two from now, they're going to be asking us, we're going to have to ask them whether we've met their expectations. I think they've been very clear. Whatever you're doing on streets isn't working, because we're 3 or 4 years into our street bond program and people are becoming less satisfied. What should be happening in our street bond program 3 and 4 years into it is people should go, wow, you're fixing these streets. This is great. We're seeing forward motion, and our satisfaction level should be increasing. It's not. And so we've got to figure out a way to do more, and we've got to think outside the box. And there may be services that have been traditionally provided for by the city that we may need to look at not doing to push that money into fixing our streets, because I think we're losing our citizens on the streets issue, and we've got to make sure of that. And that's all I have to say about that right now.
Thank you, Councilman McBose. Councilman Burrows.
Thank you for your presentation. I agree with all the council members here that, walking the streets before this last election, almost every person I talked to said, fix my streets, fix my sidewalks, fix my alleys. Is there any federal grant money for at least sidewalks that we could possibly get?
We have applied for several grants and programs for sidewalks. They're just, the money is few and far between, and there's a lot of competition out there. A lot of cities are in the same situation we are with crumbling infrastructure, so it is competitive. But we have applied recently for some major sidewalk repairs. We also utilize our community development block grant and put in a lot of sidewalks in those areas as well.
Thank you, sir. So I think, like I say, I'll be interested in next year's report. Hopefully we'll have a next year. I mean, we're doing a lot of major roads right now, our main feeder roads that I know a lot of people are trying to get up and down and are really dissatisfied because of their being backed up on it. But by next year, I think all those roads should be pretty much complete. So hopefully, at least our major roads, that satisfaction will go up on that. But I definitely agree. We just keep working on the street project.
Thank you, Councilman Burrows. I'll share a few thoughts, and Mr. Kahili is going to give us a few thoughts as well. I agree with a lot of what each of you around this table have said. We did, most of us all, knock doors. We've been to coffees. We've been to numerous events and places and people's front doors where we have heard similar things, and then some things we've heard differently. I appreciate the metrics. I appreciate having something that gives us an idea of what people are thinking, but I also want us to be careful that each of us at this table never just goes by a survey or never just goes by what some numbers say, but that all of us in the next 2 years continue throughout your districts and throughout this city to touch, feel, and smell, if you will, for yourselves, so we know exactly what's going on in each of these districts. Councilman Green has had a phenomenal idea that I hope that we will entertain and move forward with at some point. It's where from time to time, everyone around this table will share a few minutes about what's going on in their district, because it's very, very important. And I want to agree with Councilman Miklos that we very much have to take seriously the danger that we're seeing with many neighborhoods that were designed to be single-family subdivisions that are becoming slowly multi-family subdivisions. And that doesn't mean that we dislike the people. That doesn't mean that we don't care about situations where people just sometimes have a need. However, we've done some things in the last couple of years to slow those things down, like with the accessory dwellings and things like that. And we need to continue to think out of the box and look everywhere we can, because we can't afford to continue to have streets that have multiple more cars up and down, where Mrs. Johnson is frustrated because she can't back out the next morning, or if there's a party, all of a sudden numerous more cars, and it's people want to pull their hair out, the traffic issues, etc. But whether it's that or whether it's the streets that we've all talked about that cost a lot of money to do, whether it's the crime that we have to keep fighting because we're an older suburb and we're right next to Dallas. We know that Dallas has mentioned they've had their crime numbers go up, and we're right next to them. All these things, if we really want to move forward, then we look at these numbers and we do not be satisfied. If we've got a 60% in something, great. But let's don't be satisfied with 60%. Let's push for 70 for next year. If it's at 70% on one thing, let's push for 75 the next year. And again, yes, the budgets are tighter. Yes, sometimes it's hard to find the money. But if we have an attitude at this table, in conjunction with our wonderful staff and our wonderful citizens partnering together with a whatever it takes attitude. I sent Mr. Kahili today, and I put it on Facebook yesterday, one of my favorite quotes by Roger Staubach, where it says, "No traffic jams along the extra mile." We can make up for what we can't do with a budget by an attitude that says we are going to move this town forward, whatever it takes, whether it's crumbling streets, need for sidewalks, neighborhoods growing too fast, too big, with too many multifamilies, whatever the need, we can get those things done if we work together with an esprit de corps. So I'm excited. We've got a team here that's going to do that. I'm excited that we've got a staff that can get things done, has a history of getting things done, but we got to work. And we got to work real hard, day and night. We cannot ever be satisfied. Those are my 2 cents. Mr. Kahili.
Thank you, Mr. Archer, and Council, thank you for your comments. I can assure you that staff is listening and taking notes, and when we meet in our first workshop in January, this is the tool that we will begin a lot of our discussions on to help us look to solve a lot of the issues that you've brought forward. I want to thank ETS for their surveys over the past 3 years. If you look at our strategic goals and priorities, they are directly the result of this tool, and it's been very effective. So we want to thank you for the detail that you've provided and the help you've given us. Again, Council, we want to make sure that we are addressing these things. This is the tool that helps us build the next budget. A lot of the things we are in the process of executing this year is from last year's surveys. So again, we appreciate your comments, and we will discuss this more in January. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kahili. And also, I wanted to add a thought that I had written down that I didn't share, and that is we talk a lot about transparency. We talk about sharing our story. We talk about having good communication with our constituents and our residents. I think one of the best ways that we can partner with our citizens is we know there's times where neighborhood X we've not gotten to them for many years, and they're frustrated. They don't understand why they haven't gotten to yet, and we may have some legitimate reasons why we had to get to neighborhood Z and Y first. But by just letting people know, Councilman Miklos has talked to, for example, Rolling Hills a lot about, listen, you're not forgotten about. The more we tell people what's going on, the more we say. If we're running behind a big project on Town East and we just put it out there and say, hey, due to rain, due to this and that, we're behind, but we hadn't forgot you. We're working on it. That communication and just leveling with people and being frank with our residents, I think they'll appreciate that and be very patient with us. So